It was a typical Tuesday evening when the unexpected call arrived. Jamie and I were sifting through bills and planning meals for the week, our dining table littered with paper and the remnants of our hastily eaten dinner. We'd been married for 6 months, and life was a series of predictable routines and financial gymnastics. So, when the phone rang with an unknown number flashing on the screen, I was tempted to ignore it. But something, perhaps the allure of a distraction from our mundane evening, prompted me to answer. "Congratulations!" chirped a too-cheerful voice from the other end. "Is this Mrs. Eleanor Davies?" "Yes, speaking," I replied, my eyebrows knitting together in confusion. "You and your husband have just won an all-inclusive cruise to the Caribbean, courtesy of Ocean's Whisper Cruises. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary by giving away a dream vacation to a few lucky couples, and you're one of them." Jamie, overhearing the conversation, looked up with a skeptical frown. "It's probably a scam," he mouthed. Despite his caution, the weariness of our day-to-day struggles tugged at me. "And what exactly must we do to claim this prize?" I asked, the phone squeezed between my ear and shoulder as I started stacking the dishes. "Just confirm your details and be ready to set sail in 2 weeks. No strings attached," the voice assured brightly. A part of me echoed Jamie's skepticism, yet the chance for an escape, a real break from our routines, was incredibly tempting. After a brief discussion, our desperation for a change, a glimpse of the world beyond our constraints, won over. We decided to take the plunge. 2 weeks later, we boarded the Ocean's Whisper. The ship was a behemoth of steel and luxury, its decks gleaming under the port's bright lights. The staff greeted us with polite smiles and 2 cold hands, guiding us into the opulent heart of the ship. I noticed the lack of mirrors as we passed through the grand entrance hall. Odd, I thought, for such a lavish vessel. Our suite was a lavish affair, far beyond what we could afford. On the first day, we explored the ship, marveling at the closed shops with shuttered windows even in the bright afternoon. "Odd time for maintenance," Jamie commented. But we thought little of it, too caught up in the novelty. The true nature of our situation began to unfold as the sun dipped below the horizon later that day. The shops flung open their doors, and the corridors buzzed with a sudden influx of people. Elegant and timeless, their pale faces almost glowed under the ship's golden lights. A chill ran down my spine when one woman's eyes met mine, her gaze piercing, nearly hungry. Each day brought new horrors. Whispers of couples who vanished, their laughter silenced as quickly as it had burst forth. A man, claiming to be a doctor, muttered about strange symptoms among the passengers, his eyes wide and frantic. "It's not normal," he'd say, showing anyone listening to his sample's inexplicable lack of red blood cells. Deaths were whispered about. Bodies found with pallor and 2 puncture wounds, hidden away by the staff before questions could become too pointed. The daylight hours were eerily quiet, the crew sparse, and those visible moved with a sluggish, mechanical gait. Then came the island. We were told it was a paradise, but as we approached, the dense, fog-covered shores seemed anything but welcoming. Here, new staff boarded. Strange, furtive figures who avoided the sunlight and assisted with heavy curtains in every cabin. On our 3rd night, the unsettling reality of our cruise began to sharpen into focus. During a lavish dinner in the grand dining hall, draped in velvet and echoing with soft classical music, Jamie and I noticed the absence of garlic in any dish. A small detail, but one that resonated oddly with my growing unease. The sommelier, offering wines with a peculiar, almost iron-like scent, avoided direct sunlight streaming through the few windows not yet curtained. Later we strolled on the upper deck, the ocean whispering dark secrets in the splash against the ship's hull. The moon slivered in the sky, casting scant light over the deck. It was there we overheard a fragment of a hushed conversation between 2 older passengers, their voices tinged with fear. "They say the captain hasn't been seen in daylight ever," one whispered, casting nervous glances around. "And have you noticed the crew? How young they remain, year after year." Jamie squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of our shared fear. We retreated to our cabin, the weight of their words settling like a shroud around us. That night, I dreamed of drowning, of being pulled under by shadowy figures with gleaming red eyes. The following morning brought no respite. As we sat at breakfast, a pale, thin man at the following table coughed violently, his handkerchief speckled with blood by the time he composed himself. Now a familiar, harried figure, the doctor rushed over, his face drawn and worried. "This isn't normal," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "They're symptoms. They escalate so quickly." His words hung in the air, a grim prophecy as we noticed more passengers looking visibly ill, their skin ashen and eyes hollow. It wasn't until the 5th day that we met Anna and Thomas, a charming couple who seemed oddly out of time with their Victorian attire and mannerisms. They confided in us under the starlit sky, their voices low and urgent. "We've been here much longer than you can imagine," Anna confessed, her eyes darting nervously. "This ship, it's not just a vessel, it's a hunting ground." Thomas gripped her hand, his voice a somber echo of her fear. "Every few decades, they need new blood, new life to sustain them. We were like you once, lured by the promise of a journey. We've seen many come and go, never to return home." The revelation struck us like a cold wave. That night, as we lay in bed, the ship's engine thrumming through the walls, Jamie and I made a silent pact. We would leave at the next port, no matter what. Our chance came when we docked at a lush and wild secluded island. As the other passengers disembarked for a scheduled day tour, we slipped away, avoiding the crew's watchful eyes. The island, while beautiful, was unnerving, with dense forests that seemed to watch and whisper. We found an old fisherman on the island's far side, his boat bobbing gently. With hurried whispers and a handful of our remaining cash, we convinced him to take us away. The fisherman glanced back at the ocean's whisper as the island receded behind us. "They say it's cursed, that ship," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "Appears every few years with a new set of faces, then vanishes like mist." We reached the mainland by nightfall, the dark ocean sprawling ominously behind us. After alerting the authorities, their search turned up empty. The ocean's whisper, with all its dark secrets and spectral crew, had disappeared into the sea mist.